Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to episode 18 of the ESG Show. Today, we are talking about leadership and how leadership can support sustainability. Now, when I was a kid, I loved history. But as I got old, I became a tad disillusioned when I realized much of the history I'd learned was at best slightly misleading and at worst a tissue of lies. And to give you an example of that, if you'd asked the 14-year-old me, who was the greatest leader of all time, I'd have said Alexander the Great. It's just that as I got older, and indeed, I think many Victorians would have agreed with me. He was slightly hero worshipped by the Victorians. But as I got older, I learned that he committed atrocities and murdered one of his best friends in a drunken stupor. So was he a great leader? I don't think his leadership style will go down quite so well today. Now, I've known a few leaders in my time, and I'm not saying some of them have big egos. I'm simply saying that if you wanted to catch the egos of some of these leaders, you would have needed a harpoon gun. And today, we're learning about a type of leadership called servant leader. Now, I'm intrigued by that, and I'm looking forward to finding out more. They say that these days, management structure is flatter. Individuals are more empowered to make decisions without recourse to getting permission first. This is the mantra of it's better to beg for forgiveness than to ask for permission. They also say that today a leader is more like a conductor of an orchestra. They take different people with different skills and give them a voice, which when combined creates a song of business harmony. Until a decade or so ago, another form of leadership was popular, and that was rank and yank. This was a system of management that ranked staff. In some versions, there was, say, the top 20% who got bonuses, the next 70%, and then the bottom 10% were fired. Some organizations applied more extreme versions, a permanent merry-go-round of ranking, yanking, and firing. Jack Welch was a pioneer of rank and yank. He was a CEO at General Electric. Microsoft once applied a similar approach, as did, I believe, Enron. I suppose you could call it a form of a Darwinian business selection, although any detailed understanding of how evolution works would have revealed that rank and yank is quite different. Indeed, Darwin himself tended to emphasize morality and cooperation in human evolution, leaving the tantalizing idea that Darwin wasn't a Darwinist and almost certainly wouldn't have supported rank and yank. And this takes me to one of my favorite TED Talks. Margaret Heffernan cites research from William M. Muir, professor of animal sciences at Purdue University, which she refers to as super chickens. Now, Muir investigates the productivity of chickens at a farm, and all the highly productive chickens are separated from the rest. Then the highly efficient chickens breed together. The lesser average chickens breed together. The end result? Rather than the end product of super chickens breeding, creating exceptionally productive chickens, it instead created aggressive chickens. And in fact, the group of ordinary chickens saw productivity rise significantly. And what has all that got to do with ESG? Well, I think ESG looks at nuance. Social policy is part of ESG, and those who think a leader does not need to worry about this or instead create a nice simple yank and rank system are simply being simplistic. ESG is not simplistic, but ESG leaders need to learn how to explain subtlety and nuance in a way that is easy to understand and motivate staff in that way. Anyway, that is enough from me. Today, we're being joined by three great guests. But before I introduce them, just like to say something about the ESG show. We're on episode 18 now, and since the launch, our audience has grown and grown. Last week was one of our most popular, it was our most popular episode to date, and I think this episode may be just as popular. So thank you all for watching the show. Hope you're all enjoying it. We're also looking for partners who may find synergy with what we're doing, who can work with us, sponsor the show, talk about their take on ESG to our audience, and help us make the show even better. So if you're interested, please contact me, michael.baxter@techopian.com. Thank you very much. And let's meet the guests. And on the show today is Tanya Popeau. Hello, Tanya.
Hi, Michael. Hi, everyone. Great to meet you. Looking forward to the discussion today.
Great. Well, great to have you here. So Tanya is the director of Synthesis. Her expertise lies in innovation and sustainability. She has worked with the world's leading corporates, non-profits, government agencies, and academic institutions to design breakthrough innovations to global challenges. Her clients have included Unilever, the United Nations, UK government, UCL, and the University of Chicago. It's a lot of U's. Do you only ever work with companies whose names begin with U, Tanya?
It's part of the policy, yeah.
She has worked across the globe in Africa, Asia, the US, and UK. Her projects have covered a range of sustainability issues, including urban poverty, energy efficiency, social cohesion, sustainability, development, and education. Tanya was also a consultant and advisor to the United Nations. She worked for the UN's largest agency and was at the forefront of their shift to a strategic focus on innovation. She implemented this new approach across 15 countries in the Asia Pacific, overseeing the development of the first ever innovation fund in the region. She was the lead consultant on the fund, which generated projects which tackled challenges from natural disasters to women's economic empowerment. She is often asked to guest lecture on innovation and sustainability and has delivered sessions at UCL, Warwick Business School, and the University of Chicago. She has recently joined the academic faculty at the University of Exeter, where she teaches the module Tackling Global Challenges, which sounds incredibly interesting, by the way. I like to get you on the show and spend the entire show talking about tackling global challenges. And probably one show wouldn't be anywhere near long enough either. Tanya studied at Cambridge University and King's College London. Her studies have focused on innovating to solve complex global challenges and the use of new emerging technologies to bring about positive and social impact. So Tanya, you worked with the UN for a while. That sounds pretty interesting. Can you tell us a tad more about that?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it was very exciting. So I was tasked with really supporting and developing the design of their innovation strategy. So I scaled that and implemented that across Asia and Europe, and spent a little bit of time up in New York as well at headquarters. So it really meant working with expert teams across a range of, what we would call sustainability subjects now, really about the sustainable development goals. So I worked on projects that focused on energy efficiency, urban poverty, carbon reduction, new technology to focus on reducing carbon emissions. So all of the things we know today as the Sustainable Development Goals. And we would rapidly research, design, and develop new innovations. Many of them went on to scale very successfully, and some of them even won international awards. So yeah, really exciting times.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Tanya, and looking forward to speaking to you again in a few minutes. Also on the show today is Daniella Grayson. Hello, Daniella. How are you? And good. And glad to have you back, by the way. Daniella was on the very first episode of the ESG Show. How are you?
I'm great. Hi, I'm very excited to be here, and I'm excited to be back. Looking forward to this conversation.
Well, we're delighted to have you back. And where are you calling from? Where are you today?
I am in New York today.
In New York. So Daniella is VP Global Technology and Enablement at Reuters. She's a digital and ESG leader and human advocate. On her LinkedIn profile, she cites Colin Powell, who said, "Great leaders are almost always great simplifiers who can cut through argument, debate, and doubt to offer a solution everyone can understand." And today, Daniella is going to do exactly that for us. She's going to give us all a nice, simple solution. She was the subject of a glowing article in the Hispanic Times, and she told the publication, "I was this little Puerto Rican girl from New Jersey who had moved around her whole life and clawed her way up to where I wanted to be. I took all of what people might see as negatives and turned them into positives." Anyway, so that's that article. Please Google Hispanic executive Daniella Grayson if you want to read more about that. For some reason, Danielle, I'm thinking of you, this little Puerto Rican girl. I'm thinking of the West Side Story for some reason.
Sometimes it feels a little bit like that.
Anyway, glad to have you here. So what advice would you have for someone maybe from a less privileged background starting out?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not even less privileged or not, right? It comes down to who you are as a human, what your character is, and whether I chose to take any negatives that were put in front of me, right? How am I going to pay for college? How am I going to do this? And really turn them into positives, because it, I'm a very growth-minded individual. I have a vision of where I want to go, and I'm goal-oriented. That being said, you really have to be able to pivot in your life when things change. So that's important. It's You have to look at criticisms that come your way and obstacles and find a way to work through them by being uncomfortable, right? You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable to succeed and grow. And that's kind of been the motto of my life, right? Um, I'm really one of these people where, from a character perspective, if you tell me I can't do it, I'm going to say, watch me. Um, within reason, of course. I'll never play for the NBA. I'm only 5'2", but within reason. It drives me, I'm a great observer of people and behaviors, and what I like and what I don't like, and I try to take that on, and so either ensure I don't do it or I to do it. And it's evolutionary. It's about believing in yourself and being confident and not being afraid of rejection, because rejection comes a lot.
It does indeed, sadly. Way too often for my liking, but anyhow, don't want to burden you with my problems. Thank you for that, Daniella. But talk to you again in a few minutes. And also on the show today is John Friedman. Hello, John. Good morning. It's definitely good morning where you are. And where are you at the moment?
I'm near Hilton Head, South Carolina right now.
South Carolina. And John has also been on the ESG show before. I think you were on episode 18, if memory serves me correctly.
I think this is 18. I was on episode 7.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
But I am on episode 18, so you're correct.
Yeah. Okay. So John has an international career spanning 3 decades. He's an award-winning ESG and sustainability leader who helps companies integrate their operational, sales, financial and cultural initiatives into sustainable and responsible business practices. He has also been instrumental in helping companies of all sizes to rise to the top of the sustainability rankings for their respective sectors. He has extensive experience helping organizations define long-term sustainability goals, especially as it relates to environmental stewardship, social progress, and sound government practices. He is a respected voice in the ESG community, often presenting at colleges and universities, as well as meetings and conferences. He is quoted frequently in national news outlets, is the author of Managing Sustainability, First Steps to First Class, available from Business Experts Press on the Amazon. And of course, not only is he a star of conferences and university lectures, he's a star of the ESG Show as well. Maybe not the pinnacle of your career, but lovely to have you here. So what are the first class steps to sustainability?
That's a great question. And I think the first step is understanding that sustainability is more, or can be more, than just an annual check the box reporting expectation, whether it's coming from your investors, your regulators, or your market, or your employees, of your environmental, social, and governance data. Your customers, your investors, the suppliers, your regulators, and even your employees are using this information to help inform their decisions about how well your company or organization is being managed. And therefore, this information can and should be used to make day-to-day management decisions on how to run the company better. That realization is the first step.
Okay, thank you for that. And can you just remind us what the name of your book was again?
It's Managing Sustainability, First Steps to First Class. As you said, thank you. It's available on Amazon and Business Expert Press.
Well,
it's available as an ebook or a Dead Tree edition.
Well, we like to give our guests the plugs that they want. Great to have you here, John. Now we're reaching that point of the show when we have to take a look at some recent news stories, or editorial rather than news stories. And there was one article I saw on Forbes, boost your leadership effectiveness overnight with one simple phrase. It says, leaders who inspire their teams understand the significance of their words and the impact they have on their colleagues' morale performance. Subtle yet profound shift in language that can elevate leadership is replacing directives such as, why don't you, with more collaborative terms such as, may I suggest? Tanya, we had a little bit of a chat about this particular quote the other day. I don't even think we're particularly impressed with that suggestion. But what are your thoughts about this article?
Yeah, I can see you pulling faces too. So for me, it's more about who the person is, their characteristics, their values, their levels of integrity. This then shapes their words and their communication. Obviously, we know communication is really important, but I think we respond more to a character. We respond more to people who are genuinely passionate about the subject, then genuinely passionate about supporting people, supporting their staff, supporting their customers and clients. And it really comes down to values and integrity as opposed to simply the words we're using.
Okay, thanks for that. Daniella, John, do you have anything to add?
I absolutely agree. I mean, you can have the most perfect words, but if it doesn't come from your heart in a genuine place, the delivery is going to fall flat. Really, it's a shift, I think, in mindset, right? So going from that dictatorship type of corporate culture style, you will do as I say, and really embracing a more sense of humanity and unity. What does it mean all around? And that is that is a character. I mean, I agree with Tanya completely. That is a character that needs to influence, right? In order to inspire people, you have to be inspiring as an individual. I don't, you can give a robot all of the words, and you're, will likely leave uninspired.
Indeed, yeah. Out of interest, have any of you guys watched a TV series called Ted Lasso? Have any of you watched Ted Lasso? That's a big no, isn't it? So Ted Lasso the series on Apple TV, and it's great. It's really good, and it's about this American guy that comes in to coach an English fictional soccer team, and he doesn't know anything about football, but he has this really engaging style about him. And there's one scene in it that really sticks in my mind. There was this player who played for the team who was a bit of a prima donna, who's fantastically gifted, had an ego on him, the size of Jupiter or something. And his name was Jamie Tarr. And Ted Lasso called him to side one day, and he said to him, "Jamie, do you know what?" He said, "You are probably the most gifted athlete I've ever known in my life. You are fantastic, aren't you? You're just an incredible player." He said, "Do you know what? I think you could be even better if you would pass the ball a bit more." I quite like that line. I just thought it was really tactfully done. John, do you have any, not necessarily on Ted Lasso, but any comments on this?
Well, I won't comment on something I haven't seen, but and I know it's the worst thing in the world when every member of a panel agrees. But I'm going to amplify and agree with everything that Tanya and Daniella said. We've all known people who always knew the right words, who were slick and polished with their delivery and had no sincerity. And that's sort of the epitome of the salesperson that you absolutely cannot stand, versus an authentic leader who is true to themselves, true to the vision, is clear with the vision, and may not have the perfect face, the perfect words, the perfect style, but in your heart of hearts they mean everything that they say.
Okay, thanks for that. And that takes us on to the second article, which we spotted, which I think you're going to have a brief chat about, John, which is leadership lessons. 5 leadership lessons from the next generation. Have you had a chance to have a look at that, John?
I did have a chance to look at it, and I'm really glad because I have to say that I hope that people go beyond the headline because it makes it sound like these are attributes described in the article are something new and radical, and only that young people or the latest generation of people coming to the workforce are bringing them in. And that's just simply not true. In fact, some of these are business lessons from the past that younger business leaders have embraced or are rediscovering for themselves. For example, the concept of hiring the right people and standing aside and letting them do the job based on a shared and clearly articulated vision and values is nothing new. Hire for passion, train for skill. We've all heard that. The idea of empowering your employees. You want to attract, hire, and retain the best employees. Why not give them the power and the tools and the authority and the agency to do that? But there's also a level of naivete if you don't think that you need to have some structures and governance in place to make sure that that zeal and enthusiasm doesn't, tip over into unethical or illegal behavior simply because of not dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Another idea is that your reward is proportional to the amount of risk you're willing to take to achieve your vision. That's nothing new. We've heard the phrase bet the farm or bet the company since the 1980s. The difference here is the focus is betting on one's own fate, and individual organizations and sole proprietorships, rather than that of if you're a leader and you have even a dozen employees who are relying on you to make the decisions to help them stay safe and secure in their job, you have got to marry that entrepreneurial spirit with a little bit of risk management and understanding. And the last element I want to touch on is the idea of morality as the basis for success. And this, in my mind, is a somewhat dangerous idea, because we're certainly seeing investor interest in companies that are, quote, doing the right thing, that's going beyond maximizing their shareholder return and also seeking to have a positive impact on society and the world. But at the same time, this is right where ESG is currently maturing. We're getting away from the pick your own target, choose your own pathway to get there, and trying to figure out the universal standards. But that's where the rub is, because while there's a growing call for this, there are fundamentally disagreements around the world based on culture, religion, background, government structures on what the right thing is. So when you say it's morality is the basis for success, who defines that morality? And it's particularly in the social dimension, it's going to be a lot harder. I'm just going to give an easy example. As we try to define what it means to have a living wage, or the age at which a person becomes an adult versus a child when it comes to labor, and what are labor conditions and safe and appropriate working conditions. Those are not universally agreed upon. And so saying doing the right thing sounds and feels good, but particularly as you grow and you're more than just one person working in one place, you have to consider these larger issues.
Okay, thanks for that, John. Interestingly, this episode is being broadcast on the day that BP parted ways with its CEO. And I think they cited his personal relationships. I don't know anything about it, but that's probably going to become an interesting leadership story in due course. The BP CEO is known as being the Instagram CEO. He used to go on Instagram all the time. And anyway, so that's that. Also, finally, there's a story here from ego to echo. A universal approach to workplace transformation. And that was in a publication called, I'm not quite sure what it was called, actually. I'll tell you in just a second. I don't know. Working Place Insight, that publication was called. Daniella, did you have a chance to read this article? What are your thoughts?
I did. So from ego to eco is really a little bit about what you spoke about earlier, right? How are we evolving in the business world from that, dictatorial kind of approach to that more embrace unity, diversity of thought? It's evolutionary, right? So years ago, we started with flattening the organizations and removing ranks and things like that. So we've evolved. I think that really what we need to start doing in the transformational stage, and where ESG is a huge contributor, is that diversity of thought piece, right? Diversity of the humans that you bring in to work with you, that we bring passion and passion can't be taught, but skills can be, right? And so it's really about the leaders of these organizations, these business owners, et cetera, getting comfortable with moving away from, do you need a PhD? Do you need a master's? Do you need a bachelor's? Do you really need it? Are you performing surgery? Do you need life experience? Is life experience better suited for these things? And so this article is really about how we go from that dictatorial kind of way into more of a unity, inclusive, evolutionary path, right? It's about changing and shifting the mindset of the leaders from that, you must do this, and I will sit here and watch you do it in that manner that I've told you, versus I hired all of you people to bring us some great information, knowledge, and experience, and you guys tell me how to solution this, right? That is very much my approach. I'm a servant leader. It's just who I am as my character, and it's really about looking at people and embracing what everybody brings to the table. Diversity to me is, if you are fishing from the same pond with the same criteria, you may get a different color fish, but it will likely all taste the same, right? So this is about going and fishing in other ponds so that way you can have a flavorful bounty, if you will. And it's about inspiring people to be the best people that they can be. And when people are inspired to work, you get fantastic collaboration. You get passion-driven success. You get super chickens, Michael, right? When people come to the table with what they do best and everybody is chipping in, you have a fantastic product versus that competitive, constant competition of mine came out first, mine came out, that competition that doesn't really get to market in an efficient or super successful way usually, right?
Okay, thank you for that, Daniella. Now I'm going to be briefly talking to John about the secret sauce. I had fun and games with a secret sauce yesterday. I bought myself a joint of pork and I was preparing a sensational meal, but it all went horribly wrong. And I won't go into details as to how it went horribly wrong, but I tell you, it involved the kitchen floor and an extremely naughty dog. But anyhow, your secret sauce, John, applies to leaders. When we spoke the other day, you were talking about some of the many leaders you have interviewed. Can you tell me just a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So, getting involved in sustainability in its very early days, particularly in the US, and then being the sustainable business writer for Huffington Post, that afforded me the opportunity to meet, chat with, and interview some of the real visionary leaders in this space. And over the course of doing so, I set out to try to figure out what makes a business leader embrace this larger picture, to go beyond compliance, to be strategic, to have a vision, what is beyond the usually short-term tenure at the top, and to try to build a legacy. So what lessons did I learn? There's the economist, the famous US economist, Milton Friedman, no relation, or we would have had some great dinner table conversations, because his thesis was the basis for business schools for decades. And he emphasized that the role of business was to maximize its profits as long as it stayed within what he called the rules of the game, which he really focused on that which was encoded in law, with giving just a slight nod to what was an ethical custom. But what's happened since the 1970s is that ethical customs have changed and evolved, and societal expectations have changed. And while the law is often slow to follow, businesses are starting to recognize that what their customers want and what employees want of the organization where they're going to bring their time and their talent has evolved beyond let's just make money real quick and real fast. And part of that is in the 1980s when we saw the dot-com boom and bust as companies chased maximum short-term returns rewarding their shareholders, but also abandoning their customers and employees in the process. Same thing with the housing bubble, which really shook many people's fundamental understanding of what it meant to create value. And again, some people made a ton of money, but other people lost their homes. And many people lost their homes, found themselves underwater on their mortgages, and people could understand how an internet company that promised to deliver organic pet food by drone might be risky. But the idea that the housing market could be subject to just rampant speculation and people bundling bad loans together and giving them a good credit rating and selling that in an effort to chase the shareholder return at the expense of everything else. I think that was a real watershed moment for a lot of people.
Which went pear-shaped. And in the end, the organizations, they chased short-term profits, and they, if it wasn't for central banks, would have gone out of business and suffered the consequences of that, presumably.
Exactly.
Yeah. So have you tried to find a common denominator?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, is sort of the secret sauce. And one of the CEOs I was talking to, I don't mind saying, is Indra Nooyi from Pepsi, literally said to me, "I'm not going to tell you the secret because I've never found one."
Well, because Coca-Cola have got it, haven't they?
Well, but I think it won't surprise anyone that people who take their own personal vision and use it to found a company, to create something, often have this sense of legacy. I'm going to build something. I'm going to build something. It's their company, their idea. They have a sense of pride and ownership. It's their name that's either on the door or on the letterhead, whether it's not the name across the top, it might be as the founder. And they want to create something. It's their baby, if you will, and they want it to grow and thrive in the world. So one of the things I looked at was the other CEOs who come in and and adopt this mindset. And I tried to see, are all of them parents and therefore have the longer term perspective because they're thinking of the next generation? And the answer is many of them, yes, but many of them, no. And I was looking at both men and women when I was doing this, but I considered the concept of parenting and having the sense of another generation, inheriting the world as well as potentially the company. But there are those who come to turn around a situation. I think many people don't remember that Unilever was literally facing a hostile takeover, which gave them a burning platform, if you will, to change direction and reform when Paul Pullman came in and embraced the idea of that this company had been around for decades and would continue to be around for decades at a time when its survival was threatened. That sustaining over decades, that's sustainability. And so that was invoking the existing legacy and the existing pride that the employees had in the company, the investors had in it, the board of directors had, to use that to build a future legacy. But then there are those who just see beyond the horizon. The company is doing fine and well, but a course correction is needed, not to face what's happening today, but what's coming. They see what's coming, and like the push for decarbonizing the economy, especially in the energy sector. And what they did was they pivoted before it became obvious. They went from being a company that delivered one form of energy, and they added to a more portfolio solution to add the renewables and the decarbonized energy sources. So they weren't just a, if you will, fossil fuel natural gas company. They were now an energy company, and they had wind, solar, and geothermal and hydro in their portfolio. So successful leaders, I found, adapt early, involve themselves, roll up their sleeves, get involved in the organization, getting back to that idea of let's go versus you go in terms of leadership style, focusing on a vision for the future that they and others can embrace and feel proud of, and often building that by reaching back to the culture and the values that have made the company or organization successful in the past. So I often look and encourage companies in my consulting to go back to your foundational documents. What did your leader set out for this company to be in the past? And very often it's not. We want to maximize quarterly shareholder return and retire at 35 and get on a boat and sail the 7 seas.
Okay.
So the secret sauce has more than one ingredient, is I guess what I'm trying to say. But I'm also going to say, don't blame the dog. If you put food in the dog zone, it is fair game.
Touche. You've caught me out, haven't you? Okay. Thank you for that, John. Tanya is going to be joining us now. So Tanya, hello. So what makes a great leader? What do you think makes a great leader?
Well, I mean, we're talking about leadership in sustainability, really, and the difference here. I think one of the key issues is that we don't have a template for where we are now. We're in an unprecedented time. When I talk to leaders across the private sector, public sector, they have set targets, they've set net zero targets, they have a very clearly defined sustainability plan. But now we need to actually understand how we're going to get there. And for me, and obviously from my background, that really is about introducing innovative techniques and technologies. And it's about creating new templates, new strategies, new ways of doing this. So yes, we have kind of the traditional leadership, but we need more right now. We need those champions who are going to be prepared to step up to the plate, who are going to be prepared to forge new ways of doing things. We know that they don't have all of the answers. So it's many people find that a very difficult place to lead from, to stand in front of a group of people, to be able to say, I don't fully know how we're going to achieve this. I don't fully know whether we can achieve these targets, which is the real truth, because globally we are in new waters, if you like. But you have to be able to set a clear vision. You have to be able to lead your team through a process. You have to be able to devise a clear strategy, a clear vision, and at the same time, embrace the innovation, embrace the opportunities, and galvanize, bring your team with you and move them through from point A to B to C. That's what I know that sustainability leaders are grappling with. And the only way to do this is not just collaborating and bringing together the teams and departments within your organization, but we have to step outside of our organizations. We need cross collaboration across industries. We need CEOs stepping up together. The traditional competition that we've had between brands and clients, we're going to have to work together just as we did during COVID. If you look at the way the banks stepped up to work together to rapidly produce new financial products and new financial processes for us as customers to get to grips with the situation we were in. That's the kind of leadership that's required now. I talk to many people who say, everybody's waiting for someone else to move. Everybody's waiting, be it the built environment, be it consumer goods, for a template that can show us how we're going to continue to drive profit. Because let's be honest, most people are in economic recovery after COVID. So we need to continue to drive profit, but also embed these sustainability topics from food waste to the circular economy, to packaging, to driving social impact, and of course to reducing carbon. All of this is going to require a range of different people, a new range of thinking, specialists from think tanks to academics to, and involving the private sector as well. So it's a new set of tools, a new set of strategies, a new set of thought leadership. And we have to have the champions who have both the strategy, the clear vision, and the ability to implement it whilst embracing the innovation and the opportunities and the uncertainty at the same time.
Okay, thank you for that, Tanya. And what about authenticity? Does this sort of come into that's important, isn't it?
Yeah, and authenticity is a word that's really bandied about. We've heard this a lot. And again, it goes back to the first point I made. There's a real difference between you giving us a polished speech and you actually delivering on what you say you're going to do. You are the person who you say you are, and that's going to make a massive difference to your clients, to your customers, to collaborating, as I said, internally, but also forming new connections externally. It's going to take one of those champion leaders and champion leaders across the industries. And I think we're going to see, as you say, authentic leaders step up and start to lead within their own industries. And authenticity is going to be a big part of that.
Okay, thank you. And you've one more question, a quick question, really, but it's a massive topic. The other day you talked about the left and right hand side of the brain in the context of leadership. Can you briefly explain what you meant by that?
Absolutely. So we know, look, the logical side, the practical side, we know you've got to have the KPIs, we know you've got to set strategy and have all of those project management tools in place and the clear structure if you're going to implement successfully. It's the other side that's ignored. The creative, the innovation, what we call the soft skills, the ability to galvanize people, the ability to get along with people. Often leaders kind of bypass that and they're just very much focused on cracking the whip. If you can combine that creativity and innovation and, passion with the very hard, practical implementation, KPIs, project management skills that's going to get you from A to B. When you combine both of those, that's where you get solid, great leadership.
Okay, thank you for that, Tanya. We'll see you again shortly. Now I'm going to be joined by Daniella again. Hi, Daniella. One of my favorite quotes from literature is from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, when Safo Beeblebrook said, "If there is anything more important than my ego around here, I want it caught and shot now." So, Daniella, is there room for ego with great leaders?
No. There's room for great confidence, right? But ego suggests that it's my way or the highway. And if it's my way or the highway, then do it yourself, right? And if you could do it yourself, then it would be done already. Might not be so great. It doesn't lead to, it may lead to temporary success on occasion in that very dictatorial fashion, but it doesn't lead to sustainable growth for profits, sustainable evolution for a corporation, for that company culture. So confidence is a huge factor, because you have to be confident in knowing what your vision is and what your outcomes need to be. But you also have to be confident enough to know what you don't know and step back and let others come in. And I think that a lot of what's happening today is ESG sits a lot in the compliance offices, right? So your ESG leaders and anybody tied to ESG is usually somewhere in a compliance in a legal office in a legal department, because that's how it got introduced to the business, right? These set of compliance rules that we're going to put in, and then HR came in, and so now it's HR and you're sitting at the enterprise level. I think, and to Tanya's point earlier, I think that really what we need to do is embed into the organizations. Everyone, every single employee of any company, every customer, every interaction has an ESG element to it. And we have to understand that and embrace that. And it's really a cultural mindset shift. And it's important that we continue to push forward with that kind of thinking. And as a leader, that super confidence level is extremely important. As a servant leader, I will tell you, I'm very, very confident. I'm confident in knowing what outcomes we need to have. And that confidence doesn't come just from me knowing. That confidence comes from a series of conversations or educating myself on certain topics and having conversations outside of the company with industry experts. It's really about embracing community, not just the people that you work directly with, but really embracing community in helping to guide and continue to evolve. So, and you're back. I didn't know if we lost you. So it's really, I think that there is no real room for ego in its true definition, but you need a strong, confident leader, because there are times where you are bound by compliance and you have to do things a certain way to do it. And in this era of technology and AI, the other piece is ethics, right? Ethics and morality. I mean, it is huge. And so it's the leader's responsibility to ensure that everybody's staying on the same page and we're doing things in an ethical and moral fashion.
Okay, thanks for that, Daniella. We're running out of time and we've got so much to cover. I just wanted to quickly say that there used to be a football coach from British Soccer 2 or 3 decades ago called Brian Clough. And somebody once asked him, what do you do if your players disagree with you? And he said, well, we sit down around a table and we keep talking about it until we finally decide I was right all along. Presumably that's not a style of management you would agree with.
No, not at all. Not at all. We sit around the table and I sit very quietly. So it's very unsettling for anybody who's been in a meeting with me for the first time, because I sit very, very quietly. And oftentimes it's one of my little techniques and tactics. Oftentimes I will grab my phone or grab a notepad or whatever and pretend to almost not be in the meeting, even while I'm sitting there, because I find that if I am there, the level of discussion and chatter is, they're comfortable enough to have that discussion. But if I feel like it's not progressing, I tend to withdraw a little bit perceptually. And I find that increases conversation. People feel a little bit more free to speak. And I encourage that, right? There are no wrong answers. The only wrong answers are, the ones that are not, in the benefit of success.
Absolutely. Because even if people come up with a suggestion which in itself doesn't seem great, it might lead to discussion that can throw up a good idea, I guess. Okay. Look, we are running very low on time, and I did really want to deal with some of the questions that we've had. And if perhaps Tanya and John could join us again for this section. We've had a question from Jignesh Long. I hope I said that correctly. And I'd like to know I would like to know how leadership is measured at ESG and CSR. Is there a thick line? Is there a thick line between ESG and CSR? Any thoughts on that question?
I'm not quite sure I heard you, Michael, but I will say just quickly in terms of the difference between ESG and CSR. So CSR obviously being what kind of came before ESG, corporate social responsibility. And to me, what we used to be able to do, what companies used to do, was it didn't really matter where they derived their profits from. So, if their projects or their services or products were harming the environment or society, it didn't matter as long as they were giving some money over here to charity. What sustainability says is you've got to look at your products and services, the impacts it's having internally in your company and externally, and it's not okay. You've got to minimize risk and really reduce the negative impact you're having on society and environment as a whole. So that's the major difference. And so that level of leadership is much more all-encompassing. If you're going to really drive sustainability, and to answer some of the questions that I can see coming in, you've got to understand how you're going to adapt your business model to ensure that you're driving profits and purpose, if you like, and ensuring that you're having a positive social and environmental impact. So that's a completely different style of leadership needed, and a much more kind of all-encompassing leadership style needed.
See, to me, CSR and sustainability are the strategy, and ESG is the focus on the measurements and the metrics. But I'd like to postulate that one day we're just going to call this business, because in the 21st century, this is how a business is successful. This is how it's measured. This is how it's going to be rewarded by its investors. This is how it's going to earn the right to operate. It's how it's going to earn customer loyalty, and how it's going to earn the idea of employees who are willing to come and bring their best ideas to sit around that table with Daniella and not have her presence be a deterrent. And I've actually seen CEOs leave a room in order to have the conversation be more fulsome. But to recognize that if you give your employees, if you hire the right people, empowering them and giving them agency is a pathway not only for their self-realization and for them to stay with you longer, but it's also a pathway to success. I'll give a quick example. How many times has anyone been at an airport where you had a very simple solution of, okay, my flight's delayed. I need to get to this certain location. You have another flight leaving in 10 minutes that goes to the same city, although it's a different airport, but that's my final destination. I have no bags, and can you switch me from this flight that's not going, that won't make my time where I need to be, and this one that will? How many times has the gate agent been empowered to make that change versus how many times have they had to pick up the phone and say, let me call someone to see if I can help you? Which one do you think is a better run organization? Which one do you think has more employee loyalty? And which one would you rather fly with?
Okay, thank you for that. So Ellen Williams, who's been a guest on the show before and will be a guest on the show again, do you think that the leader's path to leadership dictates how they lead? So it's how they got there. Does that determine how they then lead, do you think?
I'll take this one. I don't think that I think that the only thing that dictates how you lead is who you are as a human, right? What you're comfortable with, what your personality is, and where you sit on any of these personality charts that we've all done at some point in our career. Myers-Briggs. I really though think that what dictates, I think that what you've been exposed to and what your background is may dictate how quickly you get to a leadership role, right? So you may find some younger people in leadership roles because they had more advantages. They knew somebody. As we say in New York, I got a guy. But, I think that a leader's true leadership style is really who they are by character. And how trustworthy are they? How engaging are they? How inspiring? How willing are they to roll up their sleeves, right? Things of that nature.
I think the pathway is interesting, right? Because it's how you react to your path. We've all been in the position where we knew we had the solution and nobody listened to us. When we get into the position of leadership, do we sit there and say, well, no one listened to me when I was your age, and therefore I'm not going to listen to you? Or do we remember what it felt like? And do we recognize the value in listening anyway? There's a lot of people who feel like, well, you got to pay your dues to get where I am. And I think real servant leaders recognize, no, I can make it better for the people who I'm bringing in or who are already here. And that's my role. It's really the phrase servant leader. How can I serve? How can I serve you as an individual, as an employee or a customer? How can I serve the company? How can I serve a greater purpose?
Okay, right. Thank you for that. We're out of time, really, but we've still got so many questions. What I thought we'd do, I'm going to deal with 3 questions and ask. I'm going to one question for each of you, and I would just ask you to try and keep your answers to 30 seconds. Jognish Loa, purpose and profit can go hand in hand. ESG strategies are drivers to that. What is your take on that? Volunteers for that question?
I'll go. It absolutely can go hand in hand. It is going to require, for many organizations, radical business model innovation. So business as usual maybe is not going to provide you with profit and have a positive impact. So it's going to require change, development within the products and services that you deliver and in the strategies and how you actually lead and do this. So yes, but it's going to require change and innovation.
Okay, thank you. John Newman, whom, if I'm not very much mistaken, I had a Zoom call with a few days ago and is going to be appearing on the show in a few weeks' time. He said leaders will have to be fully transparent and vulnerable. Step out of the comfort zones. Who wants to take that one?
I can talk to that one. So I absolutely agree. I love the word vulnerable. What makes you a great servant leader is the ability to embrace vulnerability, right? Know what you don't know, not be afraid to discuss it, openly listen to others' ideas. And, as John said earlier, really just reflect on things that you don't like and about people or leaders or things that, happened to you that went wrong, and really be vulnerable and talk about it and lead in a different way. Choose to lead in a different way.
Thank you for that, Daniella. Last words to you, John. I've got a question here. I've got 2 questions here. I don't think we're going to have enough time to deal with them both. Martin Viova said, how honest does a good leader need to be to prevent only PR? Just focus on that part of the question. How honest does a good leader need to be, do you think?
I think all leaders are privy to information that they may have to either hold back and withhold because it might be something that is proprietary or further down the road, but they cannot be dishonest. They must be as honest as they can be within the rules of governance and fiduciary responsibility.
Okay, thank you for that, John. That's pretty much the end of it here. I thought I would read to you one other statement rather than make it a question from Hussein. Hussein said, leadership with a clear vision and authenticity is critical in sustainability. It establishes a course of action, inspires action, and fosters trust, resulting in meaningful change. And I have a funny feeling none of us are going to agree with that. Thank you very, very much for joining us this week, and see you all again next week. And thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.